let's get into this. We are doing a deep dive today into a concept that our source material calls one of the most powerful drivers of success in the modern world.
Personal branding.
Personal branding.
Yeah.
And I know what you might be thinking. It sounds like a fluffy buzzword, something for a motivational poster.
Right.
But the reality, at least as it's presented here, is that it's something much more fundamental. It's not promotion, it's architecture.
It's absolutely architecture. And the core insight really is this massive economic shift that's happened.
A shift. What kind of shift?
Well, for decades, success was defined by these big institutional markers, right?
Mhm.
Your job title, the company you worked for, the prestige of that institution.
These things you'd put on a resume.
Exactly.
Hmm.
But the sources argue we've moved pretty decisively into what they're calling an opportunity-driven economy.
An opportunity-driven economy. Okay, what do they mean by that specifically?
They mean that the power has fundamentally transferred. In the old model, the institution held all the leverage. They created the job, the opportunity, and you had to, ask for permission to get it.
But now.
Now, the individual's reputation is the core asset. Opportunities literally follow the person, not the career track.
Yeah,
So the most valuable thing you own isn't your resume anymore.
it's the perception.
It's the perception people hold about you. Precisely.
So this goes way beyond just having, like, a social media profile.
Mm.
The source defines it as what people associate with your name before you even open your mouth.
Yes. Before you pitch, before you apply.
Yep.
It's a silent reputation that precedes you.
And the foundation of that, it's not a big marketing budget.
No, not at all. It's authenticity, it's storytelling, and this is the critical part. It's direct trust.
What's the difference between direct trust and, say, trusting a big company?
Well, you trust a company like Coca-Cola because of regulations and, decades of history. It's institutional. But personal brands run on human-to-human trust. It's built through genuine, consistent engagement.
And that's where the real leverage is, isn't it? The source says that trust transfers.
That's the engine. That's the entire engine. If people trust you,
Yeah.
your insights, your judgment, your process, that trust it moves instantaneously to whatever you do next.
So if you're a developer who shares ideas online for years,
Right. And then you finally launch a software product, your audience, that small, dedicated group, they don't need to wait for 6 months of reviews.
they already trust the source.
They trust the source. They trust you. And that transaction just bypasses all the old gatekeepers.
That makes a ton of sense. It's a shortcut, really, built on accumulated goodwill. But let's clarify this, because I think the biggest mistake people make is mixing this up with, traditional corporate marketing.
Absolutely.
How is a personal brand fundamentally different from a Coca-Cola or a Ford?
The research draws a really a very crucial distinction here. Corporate brands are designed to be independent of any one person.
They're bigger than the founder.
Exactly. They last regardless of who the CEO is, and they rely on massive, expensive marketing campaigns to build that institutional credibility.
But a personal brand flips that model.
It flips it completely. The source uses the example of someone like Elon Musk. He is placed right at the center of the whole enterprise. He is the main driver of attention, of credibility, and, often of sales.
Okay, but hold on. If the person is at the center, doesn't that make the whole thing incredibly fragile? I mean, what if they have a huge failure or a reputational collapse? That sounds like a massive risk.
And that's a really important point. The material doesn't ignore that risk at all. It highlights that, a corporate brand can survive a CEO scandal, but a personal brand takes a massive, massive hit.
So what's the upside? Why take that risk?
The reward is that individual credibility allows you to do things a corporation just can't. When the trust is in the innovator, in the person, they get the freedom to push really unconventional ideas.
Like reusable rockets or underground tunnels?
Exactly. Things with minimal traditional market proof. The trust in the visionary basically overrides the need for a long, expensive validation cycle.
So the individual's reputation becomes the leverage point. Which brings us to the practical impact, right? This isn't just about being famous. It's about opening doors.
Unexpected doors. And it clarifies your real value, not just your job title.
Let's talk about those case studies because they're fascinating. The first one is about a nurse.
Right, a nurse. And conventionally, her career path is pretty linear, pretty specialized. But she was meticulous. She was always documenting and sharing her knowledge about hospital administration systems, new medical tech, that kind of thing.
Because she was using content to build a reputation for something more than just nursing.
Precisely. She wasn't just a nurse. She was deliberately building a brand as a tech-savvy innovator in the healthcare space.
And then an opportunity came up.
A huge one. A major medical organization needed a communications director. Now, that's a role that usually goes to, media people or PR specialists.
But they didn't look at standard resumes.
They looked for the person who could clearly communicate the future of medical technology. And because of her brand, because that consistent insight she'd been sharing, she was the obvious choice. She made this radical, non-linear leap.
Wow, so her resume wouldn't have even made the short list.
Not a chance.
But the asset, her reputation did all the heavy lifting. That's powerful.
It clarified her value instantly. She wasn't just about patient care. She was about the intersection of tech and communication in medicine.
The second case study might be even more interesting because it deals with failure.
Yes. It's about an executive who had a very high-profile business failure. And most people would just, try to bury that experience deep in their resume.
That's the traditional move, for sure.
But this executive, he reflected on it. And he realized his true strength wasn't in that specific product. It was in the process of career advancement and turnaround strategy.
He used the failure as a key part of his story.
He made it his defining moment. He didn't just say, oh, I failed, but I learned. He was much more strategic. He distilled the lessons into a whole methodology.
And he was open about it.
Completely.
Yeah.
He shared the complexity, the tough decisions, the recovery. He built an entire brand around honest expertise in navigating high-stakes career moves. He didn't hide his struggle. He monetized the wisdom that came from it.
That's a perfect example of finding value where others would just see a liability. And this gets back to those two success models, the material contrasts.
Right. First, you have the traditional model. That's product first. You build the best widget, you spend a fortune on marketing, and then, if you're lucky, brand recognition follows.
It's expensive and slow.
And it's full of gatekeepers. But then you have the modern model.
The brand first model.
Exactly. You start by building your audience and establishing deep trust first. You deliver value consistently, and then only later do you monetize that audience with a product or a service that aligns with that trust.
And this is the key insight for anyone listening, right? The sources are very clear that you do not need millions of followers for this to work.
Absolutely not. That's a huge misconception. You need a focused, trusted audience. You trade scale for depth.
A few thousand dedicated followers who really trust your judgment.
That can generate substantial income and influence. Way more than 1 million casual followers who barely know who you are. It's the depth of the connection, not the breadth.
That shift from breadth to depth is so important. So, okay, if that's the what and the why, let's get into the how. Section 3 gives a really practical framework for actually building this asset.
It does. 3 actionable pillars. And pillar 1 is essential, mastering your story.
It's almost like the hero's journey, but for your career.
That's a great way to put it. Psychologically, it is. The source breaks it down into 3 parts you need. First is your origin story.
Where you came from, what got you started.
Right, setting the stage. Second, and this is often the most important, is the defining moment. This is the struggle, the challenge that changed your perspective, like the executive we just talked about.
And third,
The transformation phase. This is your growth, where you are now, and the wisdom you gained. That's structure. It works because it makes you relatable, not just accomplished.
purpose, struggle, and growth. Okay. So if the story is the foundation, pillar 2 is the structure that keeps everything straight. And I love this concept they call the 3x3 method.
It's a fantastic alignment strategy. It's designed to eliminate noise.
How does it work?
You align 3 core personal values, which you really stand for, with 3 consistent content pillars, the topics you will always talk about.
Can you give us an example, like a good one versus a bad one?
Sure. Let's say one of your core values is intellectual rigor. A poorly aligned content pillar would be something like my random daily thoughts.
Right, that's just noise. It doesn't reinforce the value.
Not at all. But a strongly aligned content pillar would be weekly deep dives into complex systems, or maybe deconstructing common industry myths. Every single piece of content then reinforces that core value.
So it's a grid, a strategic grid to make sure everything you put out there reinforces the perception you want to build.
Exactly. There should be zero confusion about what you stand for and what you talk about. And that focus leads directly to the final pillar, which is probably the most powerful.
Consistency.
Consistency. It's so easy to forget, but it's the only thing that actually builds deep trust over time.
And it's not about just posting constantly, is it?
No, it's about being reliable. It's about showing up with value on a predictable schedule. Trust is compounded. When you repeatedly deliver, whether it's weekly or monthly, you solidify that perception.
And if you're inconsistent, that trust starts to erode.
It doesn't just stop building, it
Yeah.
actively erodes. Consistency is the compounding interest on your reputation.
So let's pull all this together. What this deep dive is really showing us is a complete strategic roadmap. This isn't about self-promotion, it's about reputation building.
It's the strategic act of achieving clarity and then earning and transferring trust.
And when it's guided by that authenticity, by that 3x3 clarity, and by rigorous consistency.
The personal brand becomes a true long-term asset, a transferable asset. It can generate influence, income, and opportunities that are just completely outside the traditional career path. It puts the power squarely back with the individual.
That is the crucial takeaway. To wrap this up, let's leave you with one final and maybe challenging question to think about.
Okay.
If an individual's reputation really is the single most valuable asset in this new economy, what happens to all those old career markers we used to rely on? Things like tenure, job titles, the standard industry ladder.
What do you mean anymore?
What implications does this have for how you plan your next professional move when you know that the best opportunities are going to follow the person, not necessarily the company? Think about that. That transferable trust, it might just be the most valuable thing you own.